All right, and welcome back to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. I'm your host, Jason Lee, with my co-host, Clint Aiken.
Did you almost forget who you were?
I almost forgot who I was again. It's been that kind of morning. I think I've just been so enamored by our guest, MaryJane, today. She's just such a rock star. It's been exciting to get to know you just before the show, and we're excited to chat with you today. Again, for our audience, if you're just tuning in for the first time, the Economic Alliance, the Gulf Coast Growth Show's mission is really to get the word out about all the great work that's happening over here in the port region, involving logistics, transportation, communication, anything construction related and petrochem related. We really just are really to help spread the good word about all the great people that impact our community. And MaryJane's one of them. Now, she's new. Right? And so we're excited
New to my
hear
role.
the story, and we're going to talk specifically about EHCMA and your role today. And for anybody that's tuning in, just to kind of stay tuned, it's going to be a pretty simplified episode to really just introduce yourself, get connected. We know a lot of our stakeholders tune in to find out what's happening in the news locally, and I think your addition to the team here at EHCMA, who plays a big role in these facilities, is great news. It's exciting news, and we're excited to have you today.
I'm happy to be here.
So we're going to dive in real quick. Why don't you give us a quick background? I mean, you were sharing with us early, but just kind of an overarching theme so people can get to know you.
Okay, so background on my career, I've had the opportunity to really have a pretty cool career. I've worked for corporations like Dow Chemical, that's where I started. In Michigan, in fact, after I graduated from Central Michigan University, and I was with Dow for some years. Then I went to Air Liquide America as their communications director. That's after I moved to the Lone Star State. I was there for about 5 years, spent some years with ConocoPhillips, Shell Oil, ran my own PR and crisis communications business. So I've had a chance to do quite a few things, including spending a few years with the American Red Cross.
Oh, wow.
And you know, through all of these roles, you know, in the beginning, when I was a young pup, so to speak, I started in marketing. But what happened was over the years, and marketing is important, but I started to develop a passion for stakeholder engagement, getting to know the communities around where those companies worked, you know, where people would work and live, understanding what was of concern to the communities. Some of them, it's called not in my backyard, didn't necessarily want plant sites there, and it took time to build the trust to help folks understand the value of corporations, of plant sites, of of what we bring to the economy.
Absolutely.
So there's that. Then when I was at the Red Cross, I was able to do really what I'd been training others to do over the years. You know, after stakeholder engagement became a love, then I started becoming very involved with crisis management. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to train many, many people, from executives to field employees to welders to you name it, folks who might be approached if there is an incident or a need. So now at the Red Cross, when I went there, I was the Chief Communications Officer in the mid-2015 through 17. I want to give you a little bit of context there. And that's when I was able to really do the things I've been teaching others to do all these years. So I was actually, when there was a flood, when there was a disaster, I was the person who was being interviewed by media. Well, yes, and it might be covered in one of the other questions where you go into you know, the greatest reward and the biggest challenges. But anyway, yes, I was very involved with Hurricane Harvey, and as I look back now, when I was in the middle of it was harder, but as I look back, not only was I able to use the skills that I had developed all those years to represent a humanitarian organization, I had the opportunity and the honor to work side by side with other, you know, the volunteers and people who were in desperate need. So, you know, you marry the two, the industry work and then that humanitarian work, and the reason EHCMA interested me is it gives me the chance to really combine my respect for industry and understanding of it with that passion for community.
Yeah, I think it's always amazing to see kind of the tapestry of how people's lives are woven together and their experiences and then what makes them tick. And then we get to see it all the time in the show, and then they get positioned in these roles that are almost as if they're built for them. You know, and
yeah,
it
it's
feels
interesting.
like this is the type of organization that is built for that in particular. You know, because when you drive up and down 225 and you see these plants, you see these refineries. I grew up in the area, so I'm just accustomed to it. But a lot of people, you know, they use the term stinkadina and things like that. You know, so they're kind
I've
of
heard
this
it.
ugly, you know, flag over here. When in reality, I always tell people when you're in our community or in a local community, probably within 25 miles of these refineries, count the number of people who are serving checking you out, the registers, all that stuff that's happening.
That's
and
right.
If you count 7 of them, it's because there's one job in the refinery. And that's a really good way of looking at it. Go job,
Absolutely.
job, because of one job that was created back in those refineries. And you're really, it's important for people to understand how that works. So tell us a little bit about EHCMA, because maybe not everybody understands how EHCMA works and your role inside of EHCMA now.
That's the East Harris County Manufacturers Association. That's what it stands for.
Thank you.
We've said it a couple times. If I was listening, I'd be like, what is that? What is that? What does that stand for? So
Yeah.
I wanted to hit that real quick.
No, that's important to do that. It's so easy to fall into acronyms. EHCMA is a member organization. In fact, we have over 90 members, and within those members, we have over 130 plant sites that we represent. So it's a membership organization. And what we do is we work with our members to share best practices, companies of manufacturing sites of all different sizes. And we're really a liaison between those companies and the community, between those companies and public policy issues and opportunities. We work alongside them to share best practices. Let's say there might be some organizations who they do follow safety standards. They absolutely do, but they could learn even more from another corporation, from a larger corporation that has done this a long time. For example, after the Texas freeze, a number of us got together, member companies, myself, and there was an open discussion about how that was managed, what different companies went through, how they could do it better next time with hurricane season coming up. I know that from the Red Cross. Preparation's key. We do that. We also are involved with many of the organizations, the local organizations, to try to represent the companies as one voice. The larger, like a Shell or an Exxon, they'll certainly want to go out and make certain statements or be able to share their views on something, but sometimes it's just better to have a coherent voice and speak on behalf of the industry. And then finally, best practice sharing. We also, and we haven't since I got in because of COVID, but there will be conferences that we put on, hurricane safety, emergency response, again, working with some very important partners. So it's a good organization, and I think not enough people understand what it offers, and it's really important to me to grow our membership so people can learn from each other and companies can continue to practice safe and reliable operations. Without that, you don't have that impact on the economy and all those other good things. We have to have safe and reliable operations.
Yeah, that's one thing that I found both through EHCMA, Economic Alliance, and even the leadership, people such as yourself, is they're trying to find people who can bridge the gap between the operators, the communities, the bigs, the littles, and really find people who can orchestrate that entire movement to where everyone's working together to row. A lot of times you'll find organizations that are, I hate to say it, you almost feel like you're a member, but you're not getting integrated into the environment. You stroke a check, you put your name on a plaque, and you're done. And I've been a part of those even, and I know I'm no longer a part. Well, what I found here with organizations such as yours, organizations such as the Economic Alliance, is there's a sincere commitment of how do we take our movement into the businesses and improve the communities around us, help people work together. And it almost sounds like, because of your background and having bred it all together, that it's you're perfect for the role. You're able to blend in and work at all those different levels.
I hope so. It's a busy time, as I onboard. But something you just triggered my memory. The EHCMA does have a number of committees as well, and these committees consist of member companies. So right there, the environmental committee, communications committee. There's a legislative committee. Of course, our Petrochem Works committee, just a number of them. And on each of these committees, there are people from all different companies. And right there is information sharing. It's vibrant, and it's important that we share that. So one of the reasons I'm here today.
Well, I think one of the questions that we had teed up was what drew you to the position, but I think you've kind of answered a lot of that as we spoke, but I would love to hear a little bit more. We're going to kind of pivot before we get ready to close out. Tell us about some of the challenges, or maybe even some of the most rewarding experiences you had, because it sounds like you've done a lot. Maybe give us one. What's a challenge? Like, I can remember this one specifically, and then maybe one of the most rewarding experiences.
Well, in this case, I'd like to share a story from earlier on in my career, and maybe this might impact some younger folks who are starting out in something, feeling a little overwhelmed. But when I left Dow Chemical, I went to Air Liquide as their communications director. And I will tell you, I had no experience at that point of directing an entire department, and I had no, get this, crisis communications experience. About 2 weeks into the job, there was an incident. Now, I will say on behalf of Air Liquide, this was over 20 years ago. It turned out that they weren't even responsible for the incident. So let's just put that there, okay? But put a pin, well, just not even a pin. It wasn't, they're a good company. But here's what happened. Because of perception, it was a terrible crisis where we were being written about in the Austin Statesman because it happened in Austin, supposedly. It's a French parent company that I was working with. They were screaming. They didn't understand why our media is the way it is, trying to explain that. And I was completely overwhelmed. And I remember that as a tough time. But let me also tell you, I also remember it as one of the most exciting times. I'm going to get to the Red Cross in a second, but the reason it was exciting is after we got past that, and after I was baptized by fire, I had the opportunity, really carte blanche, because they saw how important this was. MaryJane, we need a crisis strategy. We need a strategy and we need a communications plan and make it happen. And so from there, I did, working with a great colleague at an agency, we did an audit of the entire United States. We met with cylinder fill plant operators, we met with HR people, we met with people who didn't want us there, people who couldn't wait, all of that, and created a strategy that ended up being used as a global model for a decade. Wow. So I'm like, okay, that was really hard. Everybody was mad at me for a while, but I was able to overcome that. And that's a message I'd like to give to anybody, whether you're young, in the middle of your career. If there's a risk to it, still try it, because you may find that it becomes a passion, because you know what? That launched me into crisis communications. From then on, I've trained at this point, gosh, I stopped counting at 1,000, and again, it's not bragging, it just means a lot of years, right? So there's that. I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Plus, I got to go to Paris a few times. That was good. Okay, but the most, I'd say, without question, one of the greatest personal and professional honors of my life was working during Hurricane Harvey on behalf of the Red Cross, because it wasn't just about being interviewed by media to share where the cots were, where the food was. There's a specific mission for that organization, and I was able to do that. But also to just, be side by side with people who are coming into the George R. Brown Convention Center soaking wet, afraid, they didn't know where their kids were, they're trying to grab a wheelchair, all of this. It was just humanitarian work and work of our emergency responders, our police officers, our mayor's office, everybody coming together, just focused on helping other people. And again, as I look back, we were fortunate we didn't get flooded at our home. There were a few days where I was missing my family, or their kids were all older. But I look back at it as one of the most honorable experiences of my life. Wow,
that's fantastic. 'Cause, I'm sure you guys made a huge difference. I think it's a blessing and a curse in Houston, right? Because we're always getting flooded and always getting this other thing, but it's almost as if we get to bear witness to some of the greatest acts of humanity. You see it, this Houston Strong thing that we kind of stand by. I've always been a big fan of it, but out of tragedy comes triumph in a lot of situations, and it's
absolutely
interesting
right
to see it when it comes together, and to know that you played a role in it, I think it's just fantastic.
Just one of 3,000, though. I never want to say, because everybody, I had to give a speech on it once, and everybody's giving me a standing ovation. I'm like, don't do that, because there were about 3,000 people from around the country who dropped everything, flew in, and took care of people in those shelters. But thanks.
Unbelievable. Now, you've been kind of, talk about baptism by fire, right? You've been thrown in the wolves. You're out here, and now we're dragging you on shows, trying to. As we get ready to wrap up, what's the next 12 months look like for you? You've got a lot on your plate, so give us kind of a forecast as to what's your priorities.
Plus
and what
post-COVID as well. So
yeah. What I'm saying, it's a big undertaking, right? You're in 2021, all this new stuff happening. We're coming out of the post-COVID era. and into what this next 12 months looks like. Tell us a little bit about your journey for the next, I just said that several times.
It's okay. I got the question.
She's like, I got it.
So have you ever heard of the phrase, how does it go, where you're building a plane while you're flying it, or I don't know, building a road while you're driving on it? We'll see later if I had these correct. He's making looks at me. But here's the thing, there's a lot of work that needs to get done right now. So there are short-term goals and long-term. Short-term, as I said, there are a number of us who have met post-Texas freeze, and we're talking about how with hurricane season coming up, okay, are we prepared? And many of our companies are prepared, but let's share some best practices. Let's learn from each other. And so that's very critical. I understand hurricane season has even been pushed up this year. So yeah, and I don't want to say the date in case I'm wrong, but it's usually June 1st. Now it's in May. So yeah, and it's not just our member companies. We are meeting with mutual aid organizations. We're meeting with local legislators. We just had a meeting with our area mayors, which was very positive, to talk about how we can all work together. So that's shorter term, and of course there's the day-to-day. Longer term, I mentioned the great committees we've got. We have tremendous member companies, people with so much talent. We do have a mission, but I believe what we need to have is an overall strategy under which all of those committees can move forward for us to be able to share the value proposition with possible member companies who want to know, why should I join that group? What's it going to do for me? I think it's incumbent upon us to help them understand. But first, you got to get that ground floor in, and that's a strategy. So my hope is to create one with our board and with some member company representatives, probably at this time, I'd say sometime this summer.
Fantastic. And so for those that are listening, if they're a stakeholder and A, they want to know more about the organization, and B, they want to get to know more about you, outside of this fantastic podcast that we're very proud of, how can they reach out to you? Where do they need to go?
Well, first of all, you can go to the EHCMA website. So it would be the acronym. Let's see if EHCMA.org. Did I miss? Don't do that to me. Okay. And then for what it's worth, I'm on there, but I'm also on LinkedIn. So you could just, how many MUDs do you know? Not many. It's MaryJane Mud, and I'm on LinkedIn, and just find me that way. But yeah.
I love it. I love the find me on LinkedIn. That's becoming this new mantra, and it's exciting.
I know.
It's a great platform for that. No, we're big on it too. So we're excited to be part of your LinkedIn community and part of the community here. So we'd love to have you next door. This is great. I know.
I'm excited. Now I know why there's occasionally laughter next to my office. I didn't know what was happening in here. So I don't know. There's people are. So I'm pleased again to have had this experience, to meet the two of you and share some great things about EHCMA.
Well, you're like a fireball, so I'm going to stop by every time and get you to fire me up before the show.
Please visit anytime.
So for our audience, if you're tuning in, again, MaryJane Mudge, you can find her on LinkedIn. We're excited to have her today. We're excited to have her as part of EHCMA, who does a lot of collaborative work with the Economic Alliance to bring value to our community. As you know, you can always follow us at myself and Clint Aiken on LinkedIn, and then you can also tune in, go to the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region, go to their website and subscribe to our channels. Or you can follow us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn channel, Facebook page, YouTube, Spotify, so you can find us anywhere.
We try to be everywhere that you are.
Yeah, everywhere you are, we want to be with the Gulf Coast Growth Show. So we're excited to have you today. Tune into us next week as we continue to try to keep you informed of all the great things that's happening in our community.
Thanks.